On today's show, how is the confidence meter of Kyrie Irving re-signing right now? How are you feeling about it? We got a report recently. We should be feeling better about it. We'll tell you why coming up on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavs
Mavs, NBA champions. It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
We don't believe we shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nic Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We mean it. 5 days throughout the offseason. Thanks for being part of the show. Make it Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. Subscribe or follow for free wherever you get your podcast or on YouTube. But the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day and to comment anything below. Let us know in the comment section, who should the Mavericks target in a trade this offseason? Really curious to see who you guys think, who you guys want. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. For $20 off your first purchase, again, promo code LOCKEDONNBA. Lowest price guaranteed. Also, if you want to support the show, get texts from us, text us, talk back and forth with us. It's much better than Twitter DMs. I'm so much better at responding to subtext than I am Twitter DMs, Instagram DMs, all that kind of stuff. Subscribe to our subtext. Click the link in the description below or text the number on the screen or in the description. And joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, and contributor at Mavs.com. The Kyrie killer, the One More Thing King. What you got for me, Isaac Harris?
Listen here, Nick. We know the truth. All right.
Stop putting set you free.
Stop putting out all these cap podcasts, and I'll tell the real story when the time is right.
The cap.
Just wait. When the time's right, I'll tell the story. I'll tell you what I have for you.
Today, what we have for you is we're going to talk about some of the teams that have been eliminated. We did some yesterday, and we talked about the Wolves, and we talked about the Hawks, and we're going to talk about the Clippers, the Grizzlies, and the Kings. Could the Mavericks be getting back in to Harrison Barnes? Could the Mavericks consider Dillon Brooks or Steven Adams to bolster their roster? Could the Mavericks get some of the wings from the Clippers? We'll talk about some of those. But let's start here because Tim Cato released an article on The Athletic, friend of the show. Tim Cato, been on the show a couple of times. Wasn't the expose we've all been known Tim Cato to drop, right?
Holding back on us.
He held back. It felt like he held back a little bit, but did reveal some things. And so I want to talk about Kyrie. I want to start here. The Mavericks have to re-sign Kyrie. They have to. There's no other option for them, right? You can talk about, okay, well, they can clear about $30 million in space. That Tim Cato talked about that possibility. Bobby Marks in his offseason preview for the Mavericks talked about that on ESPN. Said, hey, they can clear up all this money and go sign some guys. We talked about some options the Mavericks could just sign in free agency. We've discussed a couple of sign and trade possibilities for Kyrie. None of them are really standing out because it doesn't seem like there's anybody else that's super interested in bringing Kyrie in. The Phoenix Suns were a team that may want to trade for him at the trade deadline. They did the KD. They have KD now. I don't think Chris Paul or DeAndre Ayton, I don't know if those guys are getting sent for Kyrie and you're feeling much better about that Phoenix Suns team. Maybe you would. The Lakers were the other team that has come up a lot for that team. That team is rolling. They feel like they know who they are now. And according to The Athletic and Tim Cato's sources and other sources, no matter how close Kyrie Irving might be to LeBron James, the Lakers are uninterested in pursuing him in free agency, say league sources. We've also heard this from Mark Stein, that the Lakers are not really interested in bringing Kyrie Irving in. That was the one guy that was the one team that looked at Kyrie and said, okay, we're interested in you, that we were waiting to hear. Okay, is this the looming threat to sign Kyrie away from the Mavericks? And it seems like the Mavericks are now, the confidence meter for me is it's a little bit higher. It's a little bit higher today, but no matter how high the confidence meter is, he has to be re-signed by the Mavericks. They have no other choice.
Yeah, it's number one goal. It should be in their number one goal. I feel like we've both been pretty confident that Kyrie would come back at the end of the season, going to the offseason. I still am. The Lakers one, scares you because of the relationship with LeBron and all the reporting stuff before that. He goes to the game the other day, game 6 game, Everybody's freaking out. All the reports, oh, Kyrie's at the game. And there's the video of him and LeBron dabbing up and all that stuff. It's like, all right,
It's great.
cool.
It's great, dude. Dude, it's great.
And it's like, we were both just like, oh, here we go. Everybody's just going to run with this, and then what was it? The next night he's in Sacramento for game 7, courtside with that game, with the Warriors, Kings. No one really reported that Kyrie walked in for that game.
I'm so sorry.
But no, I mean, Dallas has to re-sign him. I'm pretty right now at this moment. I'm confident he'll be back. How many years we'll figure out what that looks like. But yeah, that's step one. That's step one.
They have to re-sign him, and that's the spot that they're in right now, because we're talking about all these options and players to bring in and targets to bring back, considering you have Luka and Kyrie together. That's been my mindset, is assuming that you have those two together. Because if you don't, you have a much different issue, because all of a sudden you may have lost Brunson in one offseason for nothing, and then maybe Kyrie for nothing in another offseason.
And the thing with the sign and trade is, it has to be, it's this really delicate conversation that has to happen of, you got to have a free agent who wants to go to a team that doesn't really have the cap space to sign them. So that's when you go back to your home team and you're like, listen, being honest, don't want to be here anymore, but I want to go to this team. Is there a sign and trade thing that you could work out? Is there a, piece? Now, the way it gets tricky sometimes is if they use another team as like leverage, to where if, like, let's just say hypothetically, Kyrie said, I want to go to Phoenix. But what if Dallas like, I don't want anything from Phoenix? Too bad. And if he had another team that he could convince Dallas, hey, I'll go sign outright with, the Lakers or whoever it is. If you don't do a sign and trade with this team, then it gets so tricky. And that's where I think you hear some, the DeAndre Ayton name coming. Like Phoenix is one of the teams I'm really going to look at this summer going after Kyrie. Especially, they just lost, game 2 to the Nuggets. Let's just say they get put out in the second round by Denver. Man, that would be so heartbreaking. But
tough when they're up.
I mean, for them, I could see them trying to re-engage, even though all the KD Kyrie relationship stuff and all that. But I could see their owner trying to go after him and all of that. And then, yeah, I mean, they don't really have cap space. So then it would probably turn into if Kyrie wanted to go there, a DeAndre Ayton type thing for Dallas.
And the other teams that you're looking at that could have cap space, like, would not be really interested. It's like Orlando. It's like OKC. There's not a ton of teams that are going to have cap space this offseason that are going to be interested in Kyrie. Now, we did say that about the Brunson situation last year, and then the Knicks were able to create space. So anybody could create space if they give up enough stuff. So
I do expect another team to come to like, the top of the water at some point, just to like raise the price a little bit for Dallas. I think he comes back to Dallas, but I think it's, I don't think it's going to be, we don't hear any other team connected to Kyrie. I think they're going to need another team to come out and be connected in the reports, so that he can have a little bit of leverage with Dallas to get, a third or fourth year.
But as of now, Isaac Harris, we're waiting on that team to reveal themselves. It doesn't seem like it's going to be the Lakers. So that's a big domino for the Mavericks re-signing Kyrie that seems to have fallen, according to Mark Stein, and then now this Athletic article about how the Lakers are not interested in bringing Kyrie in. So coming up, let's talk about the team around Luka and hopefully Kyrie when he signs or re-signs and returns. Should the Mavericks consider any of the Clippers wings? Could they consider Dillon Brooks? Doesn't look like he's going to be back with the Grizzlies. Talk about some of those options coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about the Game Time app. Game Time is the app that you can check out for all the different concerts and shows and comedy and sporting events this offseason. Isaac just said to me earlier today, I'm going to go to a Wings game with you this season.
I did.
I'm excited. If you want to go to a Wings game, I'm going to be at pretty much every home game. You can get those tickets at Game Time. Check out Game Time and forget planning months in ahead. You don't have to do that. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash tickets for football, basketball, baseball, everything. Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110%, almost at 110,000, 110% of the difference. So go check that out. And then, look at the other ticket apps to see if they can give you a better deal. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code, all caps, all one word, Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, Isaac Harris, thanks for hanging out with us, everybody, being part of the show. Again, if you want to be part of the show and support the show, subscribe to our subtext. Click the link in the description below. We have a subtext mailbag every Friday, so ask some questions there. And on tomorrow's show, we will get into what if the Mavs get the number 3 pick in the draft. Last couple of Wednesdays, we've done what if they get number 1. We talked about Wembanyama and Luka, that 3% chance. We talked about number 2 a couple last week. What if they get number 2? And then 3 becomes an interesting conversation, because then it's not just, all right, you're feeling good about a player. It's, okay, what do you trade it for and what can you get for it? So we'll talk about that tomorrow. But let's get into these other teams. We've been talking about teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs and if the Mavericks can take advantage of some of the moves that they'll have to make. Well, let's start here with the Clippers. Clippers are in a weird situation. This experiment with Kawhi and Paul George has been effective in some ways and very ineffective in other. Well, it's been effective in that the Clippers are a serious franchise now. They have
True.
Free agents will go there. They bring in, they have a fan base and all that. Howard Beck on one of our Lockdown shows, he's on many now. He's on Lockdown NBA on Mondays and on all that. He had made a good point about how this Clippers thing has been successful in the sense that it brought legitimacy to this franchise and put them in its position to potentially be contenders. Now, on the other end, they have not been that. They've been to one conference finals. These guys have been, Kawhi and Paul George have been injured all the time. And now next season, they'll have $200 million in salaries committed to these guys without Russell Westbrook, whichever Plumlee brother they have, Mason, and Eric Gordon has a $20 million non-guarantee. That $20 million counts in the $200 million, but a non-guarantee. So not sure what's going on with that. But without Westbrook, they already have $200 million. I've mentioned this so many different times, and somebody brought it up on subtext like, hey, this is like a really good point, and I'm going to agree with them. The new CBA is starting next season, and this new CBA has this second tier of what's called the apron or the luxury tax, or like the next level, where you have these teams that are paying an exorbitant amount that are above the luxury tax and like several levels above that. The Warriors, the Clippers that are above that. If you're there 2 years in a row above that second apron, like dozens of millions of dollars over the salary cap, then you're held back in so many different areas, draft picks, free agency, different mechanisms you can use, all kinds of different things you're dealing with. And so I don't think teams are going to want to do that, especially if you're a Clippers team that's not really contending right now because of all your injuries. If you're the Clippers, Isaac Harris, who do you look at as to try and like move off of, and who can the Mavericks take advantage of?
Oh, gosh. I mean, for them, it's weird because, Paul George, Kawhi's contracts basically line up that, next season, they're both guaranteed at like that $45.5 million. But then they both have player options for the year after that, the 2024-2025 season. And a lot of other contracts line up with that also, for them. Marcus Morris, Covington, Batum, Eric Gordon, if they, pick up his guaranteed money. So a lot of money comes off their books in that summer of 2025.
Yeah, not this summer, but next summer.
Exactly. 2024. Yeah, I was getting my years mixed up here. Yeah. So for me, when I look at it and say, yes, if they just looked at it right now, there's multiple of these guys that I'm like, Norman Powell, yes, interested. I would take Marcus Morris on this team, even though some of you guys probably wouldn't. I would take Nic Batum on this team. I would take Zubac on this team. Like, there's a lot of these. Terrence Mann, sure. Like, there's a lot of these guys that fit. Can I throw at you a fake trade?
I'm ready. I'm here.
That I'm curious to see what you'd say about it. So let's say that they're looking at it and saying, hey, we got a lot of money coming off our books next summer. The only other guys besides Paul George and Kawhi that make big money next summer is Norman Powell and Zubac. And what if they looked around and said, hey,
Terrence Mann making 11 too.
Yeah. Sorry. But like, what if they looked at it and said, how can we get off most of that money to where we can free up and basically have another shot at adding like a third guy alongside Kawhi and Paul George next summer, and to kind of have this like kind of a reset a little bit. And they looked around and said, hey, can we flip Norman Powell and Zubac for somebody else? And what if they called Dallas on draft night and said, hey, Reggie Bullock, Davis Bertans, and the 10th overall pick for Norman Powell and Zubac. So for them, the whole thing with Reggie Bullock, he's expiring contract, so he would still play for them this year, but his money would come off the books, line up with pretty much everybody else in the roster. And then Bertans is basically due $5 million the year after that. So they'd be saving an extra like $26 million next summer. So you definitely take a little step back roster-wise for them, but they also get the 10th overall pick, another young guy they can add to the team. And for Dallas, would you give up the 10th overall pick to get Norman Powell and Zubac?
If I'm Dallas, I hope that there are better options on the table. I think those two players would fill certain needs the Mavericks have. Zubac be the guaranteed starting center that we've talked about for weeks now that the Mavericks need to absolutely get. If they don't get a guaranteed starting center that's better than Dwight Powell, then it's a failure of an offseason and failure of a front office again, 3 years in a row now. If that happens, he's not the defensive anchor that you would hope. He's not adding a ton offensively that you're super excited about. He has games every once in a while. And then Norman Powell adds some scoring, like a great scoring punch off the bench. But I think you're hoping to get that from Jaden Hardy and then, whoever, like Josh Green or whoever else. Like, you have Luka and Kyrie.
I'd say Norman Powell is the example of how you can take kind of a one-dimensional wing player and add it to a little bit more versatile wing player, and like a Norman Powell who can do a little bit more off the dribble than what like a Reggie Bullock or something like that could do. So
and he can, but I think that you hope that you have some of that already, and scoring has not been an issue for your team, especially if you're keeping Tim Hardaway too in this. If you put Tim Hardaway in that deal, then instead of Reggie, then I'm definitely thinking about that more, because if you lose Reggie Bullock, then all of a sudden you're siphoning off your best defensive players one by one.
Sure.
So I don't know about Norman and Zubac, but you would want them on the Mavericks. The problem is my other targets on this team were Robert Covington, $11.6 million expiring next season. He doesn't really play for them. Like they should want to get off that money however they can. Like the Mavericks could maybe get him for free if they have some kind of exception or anything like that. And the Batum, $11.7 million expiring. That's another one where he's getting older. He's 35. Maybe they're like, hey, we got to get off of some of this money. And those are two guys I feel like they can fairly easily get off of in the offseason. Maybe you do both of those guys for for a Davis and something else that they're interested in. It would be great if the Mavs had some seconds to send, but they don't at this point. I don't know what else you would send in a deal like this, because I don't think you're sending a future first. You don't feel good about that.
No.
Not sending like the 10th pick. That's ridiculous.
No.
But yeah, those are two guys I'm definitely targeting with any kind of an exception or anything like that. In the new CBA, by the way, your mid-level exception and all that, you can use as like a trade exception. You can trade into that. So that's like a new thing that we'll be hearing about coming up too. So
yeah, so basically, I don't know what direction the Clippers go this offseason, but if they start reshuffling the deck, I would definitely make a call if I was Dallas, because there's 3 or 4 guys, especially on the wings, and I would take Zubac for the right price too, that I'd be interested in if I was Dallas.
Before we move on to other teams, Mason Plumlee was, I thought, pretty good for them in certain stretches. He's a free agent. If you have this insane salary, like salary cap next year, I don't know if you re-sign him. Is that a guaranteed starting center for you?
No.
So he's in a weird, I thought about that too when I was looking at their cap sheet before this. He's in a weird spot where I think he's better than Dwight Powell. He would be better, but
yes,
but you're not guaranteed better. Like if he comes in, the Mavericks run their same defense and he can't run it like JaVale in that same, then you're running the same exact scenario you did last season.
Coming up after the break, I got one more question about the Clippers I got to ask you real quick.
We'll talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You can go check out Prize Picks, see what's available for you. It's super fun to pick different things. I hope that you picked some of my options that I did on yesterday's show, because I had Harden over. I think I had Maxey over. I had Tobias Harris. I think I had over. I think you picked.
I picked under.
You picked under on that. He got over on that. You just go and you pick 2 to 6 players and more or less on their projections for points, rebounds, all kinds of different stuff. Let's do Knicks Heat. Bam Adebayo, 18.5 points, more or less. It's got to be more. They got to give him more. Jalen Brunson, 24.5. Give me more on JB. Give me more because he's got to have a bounce back game. Then there's like, you can do Kevin Love, Mitchell Robinson, RJ Barrett, 21.5. Give me less on that one. If you play the power play on that one, put down $20. You win 100. If you just do the regular flex play, put down 20. You can win 45 on just that. Check out everything that's available. It's not just NBA, NHL, they have MLB, all kinds of different things. Again, and use that promo code Locked On, 100% deposit match up to $100. Again, promo code Locked On. Download the app, prizepicks.com. All right, Isaac Harris, thanks everybody for hanging out with us on the show. Again, tomorrow we're going to do what if the Mavericks get the number 3 pick in the draft? What should they do with it? Come back and comment on YouTube and let us know. Again, subscribe to our subtext and tell us what you think. Let's talk about some of these other teams, but before we do,
Next time, don't wait till it's 3 seconds left to talk.
you had one more thing.
Just real quick, gut answer. If the Clippers decide to blow it up, are you going all in for Kawhi or Paul George?
All in is something.
Just everything you have. 10th pick, future first, Josh, Jaden, salary.
I do it because it's not my job on the line, right? Like if I'm Nico Harrison and my job is on the line with it, and I'm like, all right, I can get Kawhi Leonard for our pick this year, a future first, Jaden Hardy, whatever else, I can get Kawhi Leonard on the Mavericks. I'm rolling the dice. I'm taking the dice and I'm rolling the dice on the table.
Is it really sad of me if I say no?
No, it's not, because it is so much of a risk, so much money. But Luka, Kyrie, and Kawhi would be insane. That'd be insanely good. But that's 2 injury-prone players, and Kawhi very injury-prone. But your question is invalid because they can't do that, because they have this new arena that they're building that they're not going to tear it all down just for that. They've dug themselves into a hole too deep. Like this is the classic. This is the 30 Rock. To get out of a hole, you have to dig deeper into the crevasse. You have to keep going and dig yourself out.
Some Hardaway can sell
by digging deeper and deeper and deeper and basically tank the network like they did for NBC and then get out of it. All right, let's talk about the Grizzlies. Grizzlies are out of the playoffs. So sad for them. I feel personally I'm so heartbroken that team.
Really humble team.
They really just, did everything correctly, said all the right things. Like you really feel for a team like that.
America's team.
Young team that just really, felt like they had something to prove out there, right? Like, felt like they hadn't arrived yet. Like that's the feeling I got from that team.
Yeah.
False. They have $137 million in salaries next season. That's over the salary cap, but not in like a crazy range where you're thinking about, hey, they have to make a move. Although they are close to like the actual salary cap. So maybe if they don't want to be a tax team, they can make a move, but that's without Dillon Brooks and a draft pick or anything. So if they have a, draft pick that's going to make a couple million here and there, that'll raise their money there. And they already have 14 players under contract next year. So they may want to move one or 2 guys here and there. The thing that they have to watch out for is 2025. So not next season, but the season after that. Bane is a restricted free agent. Tyus Jones is an unrestricted free agent. Xavier Tillman is going to be a free agent. And they already have $126 million in salaries lined up. So maybe they're looking forward in the future and saying, hey, not this season, but next season, we have to make some kind of cost-saving move because we've got this core that we're going to all of a sudden have to pay because we've been hitting on these draft picks.
They got to get a vet in there. That's going to start. That's going to start with them. For them, I mean, Dillon Brooks free agent. I said this the other day as like a superlative type thing. I was like, who's a free agent that you would make a call to, but you wouldn't tell anybody that you made the call to because you're kind of embarrassed. I think it would be Dillon Brooks. I think I would make the call just to see the interest.
That would be the classic Avengers, where did it bring you back to me? And it's low key, like sitting there that's exactly what it would be. And my take the other day is the Mavericks can't do it. They can't do it with Dillon Brooks. They don't have the culture anymore to handle a Dillon Brooks. His defense would absolutely help them. All that can't take the head caseness. Can't do it.
I think I'd be a little bit more open to it than you would be.
Yep. They'll probably do it. Honestly, if we know the Mavericks, they'll probably do it. They'll probably sign Dillon Brooks. You and I'll go to the press conference and we'll share a glance across the room and I'll look at you and you'll just smile and laugh at me when he says something ridiculous. Like, Luka and I, we were always good. Like, hey, like talk soon. Like, hey, we've always been close.
LeBron's another year older, and so yes, he is. Yes, Dillon.
I poke bears. There are bears in Slovenia, right?
I love Brandon Clark.
I thought you were thinking about if there are bears in Slovenia.
No. I love Brandon Clark.
I'm gonna look up how many bears.
The Achilles tear is tough, especially for a guy like that who relies a lot on his bounce and explosiveness. What percentage of Brandon?
There's
of bears?
There's over 1,000 bears in Slovenia.
I'm glad somebody
doesn't seem like a lot, but
somebody's out there counting. There's no.
It's the Slovenia Forest Service. Of course, they would be counting how many bears.
Oh, they got trackers on them.
We have 300,000 bears in the U.S.
That's
so like ratio wise, that seems like right. 300 million people in the U.S., 300,000 bears. 2 million people in Slovenia, 1,000 bears. So we have twice as many bears per capita.
I just know if I meet a grizzly bear in the woods, you better send help for the grizzly bear.
This is a classic Bates. This is a classic Bates.
But here's the thing with Brandon, a post Achilles tear Brandon Clark. What percentage of him is Dwight Powell?
Dwight Powell is 50%.
Okay.
Because Dwight is post that too, right? he's post He's post that injury as well. But yeah, Brandon Clark making 12.6 million or 12.5 million for the next 4 years. So if they're looking to move off of somebody, then he's the only like long-term money that is maybe expendable. Now he may not be expendable, seeing as though how their playoffs seeding went. Like Brandon Clark and Steven Adams would absolutely be targets if you're the Mavericks that you're looking at. But for multiple reasons, I don't think that Grizzlies will get rid of those guys because, like you said at the beginning of this segment, they need a vet, and Steven Adams was their vet, and they need him on the floor.
Yeah.
And so they have to have him. And then Brandon Clark is their versatile, like big man. They didn't have a ton of versatility with their bigs when it came, when they lost both of those guys. So all of a sudden they couldn't do the kind of lineups and their superpower of offensive rebounds, owning the glass, outlet passes, all that stuff. Like they just didn't have it once those two guys went down. So I don't think they'll get rid of those guys, but those are the two guys you're looking at if they're trying to clear up some money.
And they lost the series because of Luke Kennard's injury. If I gave you,
he's like the third highest paid player in the Grizzlies now, by the way, which is kind of crazy.
Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard, Steven Adams. If you have one Grizzly on the Mavs, who would it be?
Tyus Jones, Luke Kennard. Well, Tyus Jones, I think, is the best player of all those. So I think I'll take Tyus Jones. He's the next Jalen Brunson. If he gets signed somewhere else, he'll become.
I don't think he's that good, but I would take him on the Mavs. Yes.
I mean, he'll be.
Steven Adams on the Mavs would be a lot of fun.
I think he's a starting caliber point guard.
Huh. Interesting.
The Kings kind of have all their guys, and I don't think there's anybody on the Kings besides maybe Rashawn Holmes who's making like $12 million, like over $12 million, just not getting any playing time. It's something's going on there. He's had some off the court things that maybe we don't know everything about. So maybe that's factoring in. But like you'd think that they could use somebody like that, especially considering how Looney killed them. So if he's not getting used by the Kings and the Kings needed help down low, rebounding and all that, I'm not sure he's helping the Mavericks. He could just need to change the scenery and maybe that changes it, but I'm not paying $12 million to a guy that couldn't even play for the Kings who were trotting out Alex Len, right?
No, I'm with you. Yeah. I agree 100%.
It's like at a certain point, you trust the team that's not playing him at that point. The other thing about the Kings though, is they have some free agents that we could look at for like a mid-level exception or like some, some minimums or something like that. Harrison Barnes, Terrence Davis, Trey Lyles,
coming home,
Alex Len. Would you be interested in a Harrison Barnes reunion for the Mavericks?
Oh, 100%. You know that.
Take the personal side out of it. We loved covering Harrison Barnes. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Had really great talks with him and all that.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think he would fit in Dallas. I think he'd be great. Having another vet, having another good guy in the locker room. They reference team chemistry and stuff. Vibes are off this year. I think a lot of teams are going to go after Harrison. I think Harrison Barnes would fit great in Memphis.
You think a lot of teams are going to go after Harrison Barnes after that showing we just saw?
I do. I mean, I'm not saying like $25 million.
He was playing 14 and 13 minutes the last two games.
I think We know how much teams value chemistry.
They
guys
lost the game because he couldn't hit a shot
like him. But also, he's still like a solid quality like role player.
If it's like mid-level exception, if the Mavericks got a big with a trade in another way, and they've already done that, then heck yeah, bring him in. Like, they need at least one more wing like him, and he would be a stabilizer that could also get a bucket every once in a while. Like, absolutely, I'd bring him back on the Mavericks. Like, I'm being facetious in my HB hate.
You better watch out hating on HB. He's like, I've already kind of done the Luka experience, so
he got traded because of the Luka experience.
Yeah, you know, I was watching this, also watching the Kings. I don't think Sabonis would fit well with Luka. Like, if there was a world that you're like, hey, you could pair those two together somehow, man, I just don't think it would work. Sorry.
I think they could make it work. The pick and rolls with them would be insane.
So much of how I feel about him changed in that series.
Because they were playing off of him so far.
Yeah, it was just like they're treating him like Russ.
Yeah, they were playing, but at a certain point, it didn't matter. Like, they still scored.
He got outplayed by Kevon Looney.
He did.
Like, Kevon Looney's never making an all-star team.
They still went to Game 7 with the Warriors, though. I mean, and had to have the Steph all-time greatest Game 7 in playoff history to beat them. Yeah. So, like, what they're doing has succeeded in a way.
3 seed.
But yeah, Sabonis was not the best king, but he did some great stuff, even though Draymond has no respect for him, which makes absolutely no sense to me. Why would you shake his hand if you stomped on his chest? We're calling him out all series, and like, okay, sportsmanship.
Yeah, Draymond talking about respect and sportsmanship is kind of funny. It's kind of like Phoenix, but
yeah. Also, Draymond did that to Tristan Thompson in a finals where he's like, Tristan Thompson tried to come up and give me a handshake. I'm not built like that. He's not built like me to give a hand. So he snubbed him for a handshake. So, like,
Tristan Thompson being on the Lakers right now is one of the funniest things.
So I love seeing him on the sidelines, like just like point or LeBron go over and ask him a question. Like, we've heard that in some of the mic'd ups. You're like, what is going on?
Come on.
That's so funny. Hey, stick up for your friends. No new friends, Isaac. No new friends.
I have nothing else to say.
Guys, come back tomorrow. We'll be talking about what if the Mavs get the number 3 pick in the draft. We'll talk about the options for them and all that. Again, subscribe to our subtext. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.